Done everything you want to on your main but still want to find things to work towards? Do you need some ideas to progress your character more in phase 1? Or maybe you'd just like to hear a bit more about what is expected next phase? Well, I may just be able to help there. With phase 1 of Season of Discovery well underway and phase 2 now being confirmed for February 8th, I thought it would be worthwhile to look ahead and do some predictions on how you can prepare, as well as giving you some ideas about new bits of content that should become available. Of course, always take the future of Season of Discovery videos with a grain of salt. For once, this is classic World of Warcraft where we don't know everything in advance, and for me the preparation I'll be looking to do will mainly be for setting up my characters for the future, rather than just trying to buy stuff now to sell for more gold later, and I'll go over why I'm doing that in a moment. Everything I'll cover in this video will be how things should work in World of Warcraft with a level cap of 40. Remember though, at this seasonal, Blizzard are doing all these big changes to the game, and there's no real guarantee that just because something worked like that back then, that it will do so in phase 2 of Season of Discovery. Nevertheless, these are a bunch of things that you should be aware of heading into the next phase of the season, and hopefully along the way you'll get a few ideas of ways that you can set up your character for the future as well. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, HelloFresh. Starting off the new year is a time for changes, improvements, and new goals. And a big part of that for many of us will be around what you eat. And ensuring you're getting the right amount of what you need whilst keeping it healthy can be tricky, but HelloFresh can help with that. HelloFresh is a meal delivery service that sends you all the ingredients you need to make delicious home-cooked meals right in your own kitchen. HelloFresh keeps your options interesting by offering 45 weekly recipes and over 100 curated picks from the HelloFresh market. You can also pick and choose depending on how you want to eat. Maybe you want vegetarian, vegan, more protein, whatever you need, there are options. The meals include exact amounts of what you need, instructions, and no excess waste. What I like about these meals is not only can they get you on track to better eating in general, but they also help you level up your real-life cooking skill. Start 2024 off right and let HelloFresh help you hit your goals. They even have an offer on at the moment where whilst you remain subscribed, you'll get one free breakfast item with each box. So go to HelloFresh.com and use my code POGWillie13 or scan the QR code on screen now to check HelloFresh out today. Many thanks to HelloFresh for the sponsor. Let's get back to WoW. Let's start by talking about gold, because typically it's incredibly important in Classic, and I still think it's going to be useful to have a good amount, but just not as important as it's been in the past. So I mentioned at the start that gold isn't a huge part of the plan for me moving forwards. Why is that then? Well, back in Season of Mastery, Blizzard made a whole bunch of changes to alleviate players needing to farm to keep up with the gold requirements, which are typically involved with this game. They did things such as making elemental water or earth drop from herb or mining nodes, making Black Lotus drop from high-level herbs such as Plague Bloom, very similar to how Fel Lotus worked in TBC. In addition to Black Lotus just having way more of their own individual nodes too. And I remember because of changes such as these, flasks were about 20 to 25 gold on Season of Mastery. Of course, all of this is way off in the future at the moment, but it's just around the intention. Because another step that was in Season of Mastery was halving the price of mounts, and this appears as though it will be the case in Season of Discovery. You can go check a mount trainer or vendor at the moment and see that riding is 9 gold, and the mount is 36 gold. I'm on a character which is only rank 2 here, so I only have the race specific 10% discount. If you are PvP rank 3, you'll have a 20% discount instead. And you can get rank 3 pretty fast, by the way. If you get 15 honorable kills, then wait for the weekly reset, you'll be rank 2, and then the week after you earn 4,500 honor, wait for the following reset and you'll be rank 3. It gives a pretty good cloak as well, so maybe that's an extra reason to do it if you've been putting it off. Oh, and also certain races can't use certain mounts. For example, Night Elves can't use Mechanostriders, Tauren can't use Undead Horses, and so on. So if you're going to grind out Exalted with another faction for some reason because they have your favorite mount, you might want to check up on the restrictions first. I know it's a pretty big step to say that halving mount costs so Black Lotus and things in the future are going to be easy to get to, but I think since the server is seasonal, it makes sense to do 4 fun gameplay changes on Blizzard's part. Another reason gold has been diminished is because we earn so much at level cap now with questing. People are running around at level 25 with hundreds of gold. This has never happened before. Sure, it will have a knock-on effect for prices on the auction house, but things such as your mount cost and spell ranks aren't going to feel anywhere near as bad on your wallet in Season of Discovery. And bonus gold from level 40 quests will be even higher because there's even more experience to be converted. And then we get to do this at level 50 as well. So yeah, I think everyone's going to have quite a lot of gold for it being vanilla. And even if you're like me and you've basically cleared the map on your main, done all the pre-questing and are planning to dungeon grind, Agrend has already tweeted out that there may be other options for leveling once the cap has been raised. And for me, I am still on the fence about turning in all my pre-quests for the gold now while I can, rather than waiting for XP in Phase 2, but I'm going to hold off a little bit longer on that decision. So overall for gold, it's very nice to have within the game, but I just don't see it being as important as it usually is in a seasonal server. If I was to say a number to try and have though, 50 or more would be nice, but even then you're going to earn a good amount extra between levels 25 and 40, especially if you dungeon grind and then go back and complete quests afterwards. Those are my thoughts on gold though, because it's time to talk professions. They're in a super interesting spot at level 40, and I can pretty much guarantee there's going to be more to this than you think there is. So this is all based off an assumption, a pretty big assumption, but one I feel confident in making. In Phase 2 we'll be able to advance to expert level in professions and will cap out at 225 skill. And the artisan level, which typically can be trained at skill 200 with level 35, will be made unavailable. If you go and check a gathering profession trainer, you can already see the artisan tier has been moved to needing level 41, similar to how expert had been moved to level 26 during Phase 1. You can't see this on profession trainers who are related to crafting though for some reason. Either way, I think it makes sense seeing how things have gone so far. The reason Blizzard have done this is so people don't go around very high level zones farming endgame tier materials, which could then craft items which would be super OP for our level. It would basically be a super degenerate way to play the game, and even though it is classic, which typically is pretty degen, I don't think Blizzard want that becoming the meta. So let's say we can get to 225 in any profession. What does this mean? Let's talk about herbalism first. So there are a pair of gloves crafted through leatherworking which give a +5 to herbalism that can be obtained in Phase 1. The pattern is alliance only though, so expect to pay more on the Horde, as they will have needed to have been traded through the neutral auction house. Next phase we can also get a +5 herbalism enchant from elementals in Northwestern Swamp of Sorrows. This means anyone, providing you can equip leather or above, can get to 235 herbalism. 230 herbalism is needed for sungrass, which will be used in the best tier of health potion in Phase 2, and 235 herbalism is for blindweed, which don't have practical uses at level 40, but will go up in price a lot in Phase 3 because of limited invulnerability potions and superior mana potions. But wait, there's more. If you're a Tauren, you can go all the way to 250 herbalism thanks to your racial bonus. At this level you can pick both Ghost Mushroom as well as Grom's Blood. These are both needed for some very high-end potions, such as, again, limited invulnerability potions, as well as Mighty Rage. And whilst these won't be craftable during the 40 bracket, they will both have very high demand for the 50 bracket and onwards. And if you can find a decent farming spot, these will sell well in the future for sure. So all in all, get a pair of those herbalist gloves already, and keep in mind the enchant next phase. Speaking of potions, there is definitely space for speculation on protection potions here. Shadow protection potions can turn Twilight Lord Kelris from a pretty problematic boss into a kind of easy one. So just think of some of the bosses that'll be in Gnomeregan. The final boss typically calls in a bunch of walking bombs that do fire damage, and electric damage is nature-based in World of Warcraft. And there are so many mechanical units which could do nature damage. And don't forget about actually buying the recipe as well. Nature protection, for example, is in a bunch of places way higher than our level cap at the moment, such as Tanaris, Feralus, or STV, but you can go and buy it now if you want. Mining is also worth bringing up. So next phase there is a +5 enchant to mining skill from the Goblin Miners down in southeastern STV. This means we can get to 230 mining, and at 230 mining, we can mine true silver and dark iron ore. The problem is you won't be able to smelt them because you actually need 230 230 in the skill to learn the ability from your trainer, not 225 plus 5 from the level boost, if that makes sense. But perhaps if there's a good reason to have either of these ores for next bracket, it will be worth farming them. Another way we can more consistently get true silver next phase should be through transmuting mithril bars. It's the same transmute cooldown you would typically be using on Arcanite bars at level 60, and it shares the same cooldown with it, so it's never really been useful before. This will be changing next phase, and transmuting very well may be a decent gold maker, as true silver is needed in a bunch of engineering crafts, and engineering starts to get pretty amazing next phase. Which brings me to my next point. First, we need to talk about gnomes and gnomish engineering. That plus 15 bonus ratio to NG is about to get really good in phase 2. So again, assuming we can train to 225, that's going to put gnomes at 240 engineering with their ratio, which means gnomes will be able to train Gnomish Death Ray, which has always been good in PvP, Sniper Scope, which will be the best ranged weapon scope unless something is new in the game, all the way until level 60 when the Molten Core drop replaces it. Gnomish Mind Control Cap, another great PvP tool, Gnomish Battle Chicken, which has a chance to proc an attack speed buff, and many more. Keep in mind that some of these are bind on equip, but they also kind of have random engineering requirements too. For example, you could buy a Mind Control Cap off the auction house, and it only needs 215 engineering to equip, so even though only gnomes could make them, anyone can wear them. However, Battle Chicken needs 230 to make and equip, so essentially it's gnome only. And Horde will be able to get these items too, you're just gonna have to use the neutral auction house and pay a premium. Now of course these items are not only made by gnomes, but you'll also need to be a gnomish engineer, which has a few items that you need to turn in as part of a quest. You can prepare most of the materials for this in advance now. One more thing to keep in mind for engineering, we're going to be able to get Goblin Sapper charges next phase, and sappers were a big reason engineering has always been so popular in Classic. Other professions have been pretty great so far, but this may just well tip the scale for engineering once again. You do need to be a goblin engineer to learn how to craft them with a skill of 205, but any engineer with skill 205 can use them however. All the same, it may well be worth investing into a goblin engineer on an alt to get these made, as they're gonna be really expensive. Similar to gnomish engineering, you need to do a pre-quest where you hand in a bunch of items before you can learn the goblin specific items. However, once again, you can prepare a bunch of them now. I went and checked other professions too to see if there was anything noteworthy. It appears as though you won't be able to get weapon smithing or armor smithing at level 40. For armor smithing, everything is too high level, and for weapon smithing, Big Black Mace was a bit too high level. This means for the PvP enjoyers, no glimmering mithril insignia at 40. And unless I'm missing something, tribal leatherworking was also, surprisingly, just outside of reach. The quest to learn this sub-profession needs certain items which require 230 leatherworking to make, such as Nightscape Pants or the Turtle Scale Helm. This means unless I'm missing some leatherworking buff which does exist in the game, as things currently are, you won't be able to get a Wolf's Head Helm at level 40. Another profession to think about when the patch drops is First Aid, and you should go and buy your First Aid level up box sooner rather than later. Might not seem like a super top priority, but everyone will need to train their First Aid. At the moment in Phase 1, you need a book called First Aid Under Wraps to advance beyond Journeyman, but it's just not in the game, and you'll be able to buy it from Dustswallow Marsh for the Horde, or Arathi Highlands for the Alliance. They also sell manuals for heavy silk and mage weave bandages, which you will need as well in time, so you can either put an alt there in advance to buy them from the vendors, or just spend extra and buy them off the auction house. The final thought for professions is if you play a bunch of alts, I would level up a whole variety of them. As we are at the moment, prices for Phase 1 materials are about as cheap as they're going to be. Once we start progressing on towards 40, all these low level materials are going to get more expensive because there will just be less people doing the content. Moving on though, I've got a few random thoughts to finish up on. Nifty Stopwatch will be possible to get by level 40. This is just an all-round very useful trinket to have, and you can prepare most of the items apart from the frost oil at the moment. Everything related to this trinket will go up in price after the patch, so it will be nice to store them in the bank somewhere. And I know it's a vague point to make, but you could speculate on basically anything that people will need to use a lot of, and it could 10x in price. You know fish oil in phase 1, which are typically vendor trash and they became super valuable because everyone needed them for runes? Any item could get this same treatment. And if an item is trending towards being at or lower than vendor price on the auction house, you don't really have anything to lose if you just make a list of them and start buying random stuff. Who knows, maybe they do become necessary later on. Of course, you want to finish off getting your runes sorted. It might not be a good rune that you use at the moment, but with future runes and synergies and talents, who knows whether it will become part of your strongest build. Finish up leveling your professions to their cap, including your secondary professions if you fancy it. Professions in general seem to be a bit more impactful than usual this season so far, and there's no reason not to expect that trend to continue. And finally, just make the most of level 25 whilst it's here. I know people are always pushing for the next patch and for phase content, but if phase 2 happens around when I think it will, I'd say phase 1 has had a pretty good duration. Blizzard capping us at 25 has truly been one of the best decisions they've made in this season so far. If you made it to the end, drop a sub on the channel as I'm going to have loads of Season of Discovery content coming throughout its whole duration. That's all from me today, so thank you all very much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.